He's leading the worldwide expansion of one of the fastest growing cloud brokerages and most exclusive luxury brands in the business. Host of 2 global podcasts with over 12 million impressions, and a visionary who's redefining what's possible in real estate leadership. So give it up to the globe-trotting, market-opening, luxury-loving leader himself, Michael Valdez.
So let's start off. You have a storybook career, like truly. So share with people a little bit about your career journey, and then we'll get into some more deep topics.
Yeah, sure. So I started as an investment banker. So I was with Deutsche Bank for 10 years. I was in New York during 9/11, saw the second tower fall, decided that it's probably time to change careers. But truly the world changed that day. Risk management changed. Everything that I was doing for our clients had changed. And so I lasted about another couple of years, I would say. In 2003, I retired from banking, and I thought I was retired. And I had made a lot of money at that point. It was the early days of the internet, so I was early investors in a lot of the companies that are commonplace names in our society today. And so when you actually saw what was happening, it was, I'm born and raised in New York, and I said I need a change from New York, and I started buying property in Miami back in 03 and 04. And so I actually became licensed for my own portfolio. And so I had nothing better to do, and then I was doing a lot of charity work and philanthropic stuff. And the society columnist of the Miami Herald and I became really good friends because I was showing up to everything. And so she introduced me to the guy that bought the first franchise for Sotheby's when they were franchising in 04. And he had bought all of Southern Florida and some Caribbean islands, and he had the first reality show of our industry back in 04 on TLC that was called $1 Million Agent. His name was Carlos Justo. He used to show properties via helicopter, land on the properties.
I remember that.
I know you do. And so was just in the top 1%.
I didn't think he was real.
Yeah, well, sometimes he isn't. And so it was one of these things that, we became friends, and he says, "Why don't you come work for me?" And I said, "Because I'm not looking for a job." And so the longer that I got intrigued with what he was doing, I ended up going in and running his team. And I remember it was a team of 8 that was only dealing in the top luxury market of Miami at that time. And remember, he had sold everyone from, Stallone, going back to your story with Rocky. So Stallone, Madonna, everyone had bought in the 80s up until like Ricky Martin and Shakira and all this, like literally every celebrity client that was coming in. And so I ended up running the team. We went from $230 million in sales to $425 million in 1 year. And so I was like, okay, this is something, this is good. And so the next year I decided that I was gonna go run my own team. And so I did that. And my very first sale in real estate in 2005 was the penthouse of the Fontainebleau Hotel for $6.4 million. My second sale was a $12.8 million door knock in Fisher Island.
Wow.
And so I didn't know any better. I literally had zero fear, right? And I came from the banking world, so I was used to dealing with very wealthy clients. And so I had zero fear. I didn't know how to write a contract. And so it was just like, let's go. Let's just do this. And so I learned adaptability as I was doing that. And, we talked about 08 and 09. That was actually the best year I ever had in real estate because it taught me lessons. Miami and Las Vegas were the 2 cities that dropped values by 50%. And so those 2 cities became targets with what was called vulture funds back then. This was a spinoff of a lot of the large hedge funds. And they were focused on those 2 markets specifically to come in. Well, one of them hired me as a consultant in Miami. And I was like, well, this is crazy, this is easy. And so I used that, and then I got 3 other clients coming in based on that. And so everything shifted. And one of the things that we have to remember is that our role in a transaction as real estate professionals is to bring buyer and seller together. We have nothing to do with price. The market does that. And so when you take your own ego out of the equation, it's when you actually learn agility and you learn adaptability and you learn who the buyer is. So anyway, that continued on. In 2010, Carlos goes bankrupt, loses the franchise. I actually tried to buy the franchise. And then at that point, Maya de la Vega, who's a really great friend of mine who owns the Sotheby's franchise now in that same area, she ended up doing that. At that time, I get approached from Mike Good, who I know you know as well. And Mike Good was the CEO of Sotheby's at the time. Because my team was doing so well, I was on his radar. And I saw him at an event, and he said to me, have you ever thought about jumping on the corporate side? And I said, nope. And he started talking, and I said, I had tremendous respect for this man. And I said, what are you thinking? And so he says, we're looking for a European VP, and most of your clients are European. My mom was from Spain. I lived in Europe for many years. And so he said, well, what would that look like? And we started chatting, and long story short, I moved to London, and I run the European network for Sotheby's. Created that, increased that production by over 40% as well in a 3-year period of time, opened up 64 countries for Sotheby's in my time that I was there. And then came back to the States, ran all of the Sotheby's global expansion, and then ended up running all of the Realogy brands back then, Anywhere Now. For their global expansion when I left in 2020, was when I met Glenn Sanford and became the Chief Growth Officer of EXP for a period of almost 5 years, and then jumped into my current role as CEO of LPT International and Aperture President.
Not bad.
There was a lot in between.
Okay, so massive growth in Sotheby's.
Yep.
And now you're at LPT, which is now the fastest growing broker in
There's
the
some
history.
consistency there.
Yeah, and so, you have been in a pivotal role at these 3 companies that have had massive, massive growth. What's the secret?
I don't know if there is a secret. Look, I think the secret is knowing where the growth comes from. And that's with all of you. I mean, it comes from an agent perspective. I think that my secret weapon was being an agent first before I actually became a CEO.
Knowing your client.
Knowing your client, but knowing what that agent goes through every day, right?
Yep.
Because I was across that kitchen table trying to get that listing. I was the one that knew what it felt like when the deal fell through. I was the one that had to run my team when they didn't close a deal. And any decision that you make on a corporate level for whatever brokerage you work for, you have to do it from that lens. That's the only way you grow. You have to be authentic. You have to know.
How does that translate into what you actually do? So,
What do you mean?
well, I mean, you're saying you have to know your client, but what does that actually mean in your day-to-day interactions, in what you're doing, in the decisions that you're making? Can you give some examples?
You can't look at a spreadsheet for decisions. You really need to know what that emotional component is and how that's going to affect that family that's trying to pay the electric bill or put food on the table. You absolutely need to know that. And unless you have that emotional component to it. Look, right now, I've been very, very blessed with things that have happened in my life, and I don't need to work a day in my life any longer. But if I do, my only impetus for working is to impact others, period. That is the only thing that gets me out of bed, the only thing I want to do.
Yep.
That's it.
And people
That's
feel
it.
that.
That's it. That's the only thing that drives me right now. I actually, it's so true. I left, and I'm not here to talk about any other companies or anything else, but I left what was the largest independent and was running that company because I saw another model that I felt could actually impact many more people around the globe. And that's what I saw. And that's the only reason that I moved to what is essentially a startup.
Yep.
And it
is a startup.
Yeah. I mean, we're pre-IPO next year. It's a startup, but it is something that for me, if I can't create impact and create what I've been lucky enough to build in my life and show that roadmap to others, then I'm not interested in doing it.
In the people that you've worked with,
Yep.
and you've seen some of the most successful people that are out there. You're working with Robert Palmer, you've worked closely with Brent Gove, and a number of other really, really top agents, the Sotheby's guy. What are some of the characteristics that you see in these types of people?
Look, I think you need to, there's this thing that I always talk about stepping into your future reality, right? You need to figure out where you are going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, whatever parameter you use for growth. And you have to behave and act as though you're already there today. And I remember I had Ryan Serhant, who's a dear friend, on my podcast a couple of years ago. And he actually said it so well visually and used this example. And he said to me, Michael, when I was shooting the show, I had to know that that show would take 10 to 11 months of whatever was being shot today to be aired. And so whatever I was going to be today, those cameras were shooting him at, I had to be the agent of 10 months in the future today. And it was like, that's really a great example, and it was really impactful. And I think it was a beautiful example of what it was done. So by the time you shoot that shot and you go into the edit bay and everything else, and the advertisers come in, and by the time you shoot that today, it's 10 months before anyone is going to see what you just shot. And so 10 months in the future has to be the person you are today.
One of the things we talk about, the number one fundamental in our business plan, is to actually become the agent you would personally hire. And that's really difficult. When I do some speeches around, I'll ask people, would you list with you if you didn't know you? And everybody says yes. But I know that's not the case. And it's really hard to do, but I think that's kind of what you're talking about.
It's 100% it, yeah. You know, one of the other things that a few people have been talking about is who you have in your circle, right?
Let's talk about that.
And that's, you know, I've done these talks where I said you have to go fire your friends. And it seems really, really harsh, but think about this. The 5 people that you spend the most time with will be who will show you your future, right? You've all heard that. So think about this. Those 5 people need to sort of change in your life at certain intervals as well. So think of it as though you were going to go hike the Himalayas. You're not just going to go and hike because you're going to die, right? It's not going to happen. So you're going to go and reach a certain plateau. What happens? Somebody took you to that plateau, but what happens there? The air is thinner. You actually have to get acclimated to that space. And the person who took you there cannot take you to the next level. It's a different Sherpa that takes you there because they have a different skill set. So you want to reach the pinnacle of that mountain, it's going to take a lot of people to take you there. Because if you have the same 5 people, you're going to be in the same plateau. Does that not make sense? And so you got to go to a different guide to reach up. And guess what? The air gets thinner every time. And so the competition goes away. So true.
It's so true.
And so I've done that talk a lot. And it's the idea that when you get to the summit, you never get there alone. Anyone who tells you I've reached this by myself is lying to you.
100%.
You never, ever reach the summit alone.
Yep.
And guess what? There are many paths to the top of the mountain. And it doesn't matter which road you take, but you need the guides to take you there. And so the idea of some people, and I forgot who the earlier speaker this morning was, that talked about how sometimes even your family and friends that was you. I knew there was someone close by. His name just escaped me.
That's great.
That was not
Did
planned.
you plan that? Who was that?
See,
guy?
I was paying attention. I've been here the entire time, but I wasn't taking notes, obviously. And so that idea that sometimes your family and friends are very well intentioned, but they're fearful of not having their own roadmap to take you to the next rung.
Yep.
And when you hit that other plateau, you may not be able to see the plateau that you started from.
Yep.
And that's okay. Because when you get to the summit, you're going to come back down. And you can come back down with the knowledge of reaching the summit. And when you get there, you also get there with a great deal of knowledge, of wealth, of things that you can share with others on all the plateaus you just passed by.
Recently, you wrote a piece for Inman.
I did.
You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah. Well, actually, while I was sitting here, Inman said it became their top 5 most read article. And
congratulations.
Well, yeah, I guess. And so it was, and they asked me to actually be a regular contributor now. So thanks for that.
There
I
you
guess
go.
it was open to things. So it was talking about the Compass Anywhere merger. And we were talking about, there was an earlier article that compared it to LVMH and the conglomerate that LVMH is with 47 different luxury brands. And so I actually had a contrarian opinion to it because I felt that all of the LVMH brands actually serve the same consumer. On the flip side of now when you start thinking about if this deal goes through, in the luxury space, which is where I was limiting the discussion, you now will have Compass, Sotheby's, Corcoran, CB Global Luxury, and Christie's. So you'll have 5 different brands serving that same consumer in a luxury market. In my opinion, it homogenizes the differentiation that those brands will have for that same consumer. Anecdotally, it's already gotten back to me in some markets that there are listings that might be coming up for renewal from a Sotheby's or a Corcoran agent, and a Compass agent is coming in and saying, don't sign with them, we own them now. And so it doesn't become collaborative, it becomes cannibalistic. And so and actually one of the first people to call me after the article came out was Robert Reffkin, whom I've known for 15 years.
Yeah.
And we had a very...
Thank you.
What's that?
He said thank you.
He said
really.
He actually said interesting read. But we actually spoke for a while. You know, it's look, I've been in this business 23 years now, and I'm friends with everyone. And so we had a really wonderful discussion. And you know, we have very great professional respect for one another.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do think the Compass Anywhere merger is really interesting. I have a lot of respect for the Compass brand. I think they're one of the better brands in the country for sure, and in the consumer's eyes, and I also think in some agents' eyes. And they have a very tight company. It's one basic broker that has one brand, one look, one feel, one corporate office, and that's a business model. And if you take Anywhere, who has NRT, which is the brokerage arm that has 50 to 80,000 agents,
Correct. Yeah.
right, that are a part of the Coldwell Banker brokerage, but then you have a bunch of entrepreneurs that have bought Century 21 franchises and Coldwell Banker franchises and ERA franchises and all of those companies, and it's a completely different business model. And I don't envy their task of trying to figure out how they're going to run. And you know, they have this clear cooperation fight with the MLS and with Zillow, and that may give them some real power, and that might be a benefit to all of us
Look,
in the future, and maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really have an opinion on it. I'm
Yeah.
just on the sidelines.
Yeah,
Do you
look,
have an opinion on that, Claire?
not that I'm going to share, but but we're talking about. I did that. Gotta love my honesty. It's you gotta go back. Look, and just joking aside, I think there are opportunities where in different luxury price points there might be a reason for private listings. Other than that, I think that a consumer should have information and should have access to all information for everything that's on the market so that they can actually make the most informed decision for the greatest purchase of their life. And so when you start looking at something like what Robert might be wanting to do, Refkin that is, not Palmer,
Right.
and instead of saying with the Anywhere purchase where there's 300,000 agents across 7 brands, half of those are international. So
Right.
half of that agent count is international. When you start talking about what you just said, NRT are the company-owned offices, which is just Sotheby's, Corcoran, and Coldwell Banker are the only NRT offices within that Anywhere franchise. So now you're down to roughly about 50,000 agents in the U.S. Because the rest of those are franchise owners, and you cannot, the franchise agreement supersedes whatever desire from the parent company comes in, because their contract supersedes it. So now you have 50,000 agents, plus his, give or take, 30,000 in Compass, so 80,000 agents. It's roughly the size of what EXP is. So still a significant number of agents, but it's not 22% of the agent count in the United States, as has been stated in some other articles.
Got it. Thank you for that clarity.
Sure.
Let's talk about the future. What's
Sure.
going to happen in 2026?
Listen, I'm very, very optimistic. I think that right now there is a lot of indication that the market is getting stronger. There is a lot of indication that there is, and I don't think that 26 is the winning year. I think that it's going to be a much healthier year in 26 as we go to 27. But as you start thinking about this, you know, we're always saying to our agents that you always prepare for the boom and the bust, and you prepare for the bust and the boom. And this is now where you have to be preparing for the boom. And remember, this is the opportunity for you to go in and grab those listings and be able to control the market for when it shifts. Those that control the listing control the market. And when you're there, you can actually give a compelling differentiating value proposition, and that's the greatest thing. How are you helping your clients today? How is that? You have to be that source of truth for them. Because when the boom is here, they're not going to have the time to do that. You're not going to have the time to be able to talk to your clients now. And I remember back in when we were in the boom, listen, I was in the market. I was buying properties in the market, and I would put a lot of offers in. And there were 8 or 10 offers that would come into a property, right? All of you that were in the business.
35, 40.
Well, there you are,
markets,
right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I always say that those agents that come in, it was the greatest disservice if they came in right at that boom time, because they were no better than a barista at Starbucks. They were an order taker. And I swear to God, it's sort of, I get that reaction too when I say that. It's sort of like, but it's so true. They did not have the training. They did not care about the business. They were there, they were watching the reality shows on TV, everyone's driving a Lambo and making millions. Unfortunately, some of them actually did. They're no longer in the business. And so when you actually go there, you have to know that this is a business and treat it as such. And this is when somebody wins, when they have that longevity. When I was like trying to buy properties in that market, you know, there would have been 8, 10 different offers. I didn't get a call back from the listing agent saying that my offer wasn't accepted. I just didn't hear anything.
Right.
Now when it's shifted, you know, a lot of people are calling. And I'm still buying, but I'm buying opportunistically now, right? So there is an opportunity for all of us to remember that this is a business. You know, I always stress from everyone, how many of you have a business plan? I don't need you to raise hands. But how many of you?
They all have a business plan if they're with Fusion.
All right.
They all
All right.
have a business
Well,
plan.
then that's great. Because remember, whether you're a single agent, whether you're a team leader, whether you're running an independent brokerage or a larger brokerage, you're all the CEO of your own entity. And you have to treat it as such. And this is why your room is winning. Because this is when you actually get the tools to win.
One of the things we talk about here is we want to take real estate agents and turn them into CEOs. And to go from doing the work to owning a business. And I think that's a critical piece. So you are at the top of one of the most exciting companies, new companies that are coming up. You've got a really smart boss that has done a lot of innovation in the mortgage space and is doing more now in the real estate space. And when you guys collaborate and you guys talk about the future of real estate, what do you guys see from an agent's perspective?
You know, that's such a great question. I mean, I moved here. I met Robert Palmer at the Super Bowl 2 years ago. We were a guest of Andy Florence in Vegas, and he had invited the top 40 real estate executives to come. I was with another company when I first met him.
Yep.
To come to the Super Bowl because they were really pushing Homes.com and things of that nature. And so it was really, we had known of each other, but we had never met. And so I knew the other 38 executives that were there. And so I went to sit with someone I didn't know. And so I met Robert and his wife, Jill, and we had a really great time watching the game together. We created a friendship. We, went out to lunch a couple of times, and he started sharing the vision of what he was building. And I thought it was extraordinary of really creating a platform that would serve the largest number of agents in whatever trajectory they were in their business cycle. And I thought, why hasn't anyone else ever thought of this? And so then when we started talking about creating a standalone brand as a luxury brand, there has not been a global luxury standalone brand in over a decade. And so to create that in this market is actually where it takes a true visionary. And so this entire thing has been self-funded. We are, as I mentioned, pre-IPO. We'll be going IPO next year. It looks as though we're going in with what we call a blue chip IPO with, we'll name the banks in a couple of weeks before the end of the year. But it's all names that we all know. There are some large hedge funds that are actually coming in as part of our cap table. And so the story that we're building is quite different. And so people are resonating with that, and it's really exciting. So when we're looking at the future, what we're trying to build is a home for the largest number of agents to be able to create their own legacy.
Okay, so I just want to share something real quick here, is that as I was trying to put this together, I wanted to have some really powerful individuals that were well known, that were in the circles of all of the leaders of the organization, of the main organizations. And it is really difficult to even get connected with some of these people. And I was able to get Michael's, I knew him just a little bit, but Travis connected with me and he knew who I was, and I asked him, would you come and speak to my group? And he immediately said yes, no question. And so I deeply appreciate that. This has been a great conversation. Thank you so
brother.
much.
Thank you.
Michael Valdez, everybody.